Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video I want to talk about why I believe most cases fail, and I think it's contrary to what people may generally speaking think. A lot of time attorneys think that it's about the case outcomes, or generally speaking they think it's what happens in the court. But for example, the negotiation, the demand, the trial. But I think the cases that mainly fail are in the low stake environments, actually in the intake. This is just my perspective. There's different perspectives on it. But in this video, I want to talk about the importance of the intake call, structuring the notes, as I believe that sets a prerequisite for the future. So what I have here is a new blog article, Intake Problem, Why Most Attorneys Lose Cases Before They Start. And I'm going to link this blog article down in the description of the video, but I'm also going to talk about it a little bit of detail in this video right here. So the first thing is this, right? Bad intake has absolutely bad costs. For example, when you're asking the general questions in intake call, you have to remember all the questions that we need to ask them, how to structure that, and anything that's missed can be a very important detail for later on. So for example, right here I have here, you realize 3 weeks in that you never confirmed whether a police report was filed. Now this is just an example, this is a hypothetical situation, but these are all questions and different things that need to be sorted out in the initial intake call. And these are questions that you need to ask on day one. So the problem with the intake call in general is it could be rushed, it could be very stressful, and in that moment you're already sitting there dealing with the client's emotions, everything the client's putting on you. But at the same time you need to remember to structure and record all the necessary information which could help out later. So generally speaking, in what I've seen in typical intake calls is you'll ask the client questions, the client will kind of provide you details, and you may get just typical list of what happened and all the additional details in a very unstructured format. That's what you can see in the first diagram right here. For example, client Maria Torres, rear end sometime in March, neck hurts, approximately 10K bills, but uncertain. Just basic kind of details, and you're just listing those all out. That obviously is very helpful, but you can see the difference between scattered list format intake notes versus structured output. Client field, Maria Torres, incident, March 12th, rear end, injuries, cervical strain, ongoing, etc. Because this allows us to map specific values to the specific key, client, incident, injuries, specials, liability, missing. So in my opinion, there's a stark contrast between just a paragraph of notes, which you would see in, say, the first diagram right here, versus the structured output, because it really allows us to reference things and have a fuller picture of what is missing, what is already included, and so on. This we call the raw material, the first example, whereas this is the structured processed material, the structured output. So there's nothing necessarily wrong about either process. Obviously, both of these provide you very essential information. However, the first one is just more fragile, and one missed question can lead to gaps which follow through to the case months later. So as you can see right here, this is a high-level diagram of how a structured output would look like, with the key value pairs: client Maria Torres, incident March 12th, injuries, cervical strain, ongoing. In a structured intake, just like what we have here in the structured output, you want to have very structured questions which you always ask regardless of the situation. For example, who is the client and who is the opposing party? What happened, when, and where? What injuries were reported and what treatment has occurred? What documents exist and which ones are missing? What the liability picture looks like based on the client's account? And what still needs to be verified before the file is complete? This can obviously be very different based on the specific intake that you're performing. But generally speaking, we want a very standardized structural procedural format by which we structure and facilitate that intake. And it doesn't need to be complicated questions by any means. Most attorneys actually already know what questions they ask, but in that moment, in this spew of that moment, due to all the emotions, the pressure, etc., one question forgotten leaves many gaps, which later arise. So, and then the next thing I want to talk about is obviously these are kind of, you would want to have a very standardized set of questions which you base the structured output, the structured intake on. But the most important thing actually is not necessarily those questions. Obviously these questions are important and we don't want to disregard those. But the most important thing, or what we could at least deem it the most valuable thing, is the actual missing info, because we already have the information which has been provided to us by the client in the intake call. However, the missing info, what are we missing? What do we need information on? These are what we call the gap list, and I believe this is what's most important. For example, things such as insurance policy limits, prior injury or accident history, the police report number, etc. This checklist is very valuable because without this, there's just going to be gaps which naturally permeate. So, generally speaking, once you finish that intake, we want to confirm the missing flags afterwards, compile all that information, and with this full list, we have the complete picture by which we can structure the case. So, how does AI fit into all of this, you may ask? Above, I showed you kind of the typical intake notes, which would be very unstructured versus the structured output. What we pretty much did, and I showed this in a previous video, I'll probably link it down below in the description of this video. I have an intake tool which I provide you guys, which takes the intake notes and structured that into the structured output format which we have here. So there's no flaws, that you don't miss anything in the process. So generally, how that works is you take the input, we pass it through the AI which extracts the key points and data and structures it into that structured key value output, which I have shown right here, and which is also based off structured intake note questions such as these. And then after we use that AI pass, we output that plus the missing gap list, which I showed right here. And with that, you have the full complete picture of the intake call, not a fragmented, lacking version. And this helps you just better prepare yourself for the case and preemptively, prophylactically cover all the grounds. Now, the disclaimer is you still need to use your judgment. The AI is just a starting point. It extracts all the key details, but you, as well as the professional, needs to sit there and proofread everything over, make sure everything is valid, and then go from there. And generally speaking, one intake call is not really the problem. The problem is over a plethora of intake calls over the course of a year. Each one has very different circumstances, different pressure, different stress involved with it, and in those moments are where the gaps are going to manifest themselves. So yes, over, let's say 1 call, you may be fine. Let's say 5 calls, you may be fine. 50 calls, there may be something that you forget, and then it's through that gap which you end up losing the case potentially. So this is just the prophylactic mechanism by which I advise you to follow. AI is a tool and will help you and provide you that toolkit, and from there you can make better informed decisions on how to navigate the case accordingly. So I thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully it was of use for you. And I'll have all the descriptions, these blog posts linked down below in the description of the video. If you liked it, make sure to like it, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in working with me, you visit my website. We could book a call, whether you have AI questions, whether you're looking for custom automations. I have a software coming out very shortly, which will include all of these tools in-house in one compiled software. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop it down below. I'm here to help you. I'm here to work with you. And that's it. I'll have more videos coming out shortly. Thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.